Do you feel the system failed your granddaughter?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They failed my son, my granddaughter, our family, all of us. They're failing other children, too. You know, and it needs to stop. It really does. My son was one of the people that was calling in. Maybe that's why they didn't do anything. I don't know.
8-month-old girl was tragically murdered in June of 2023, and whereas Corporal Brandon Hallowich was assigned to the homicide investigation of Iris Rita Alfera, and whereas on January 11, 2024, an arrest was made in connection with the death of Iris Rita Alfera, and whereas Corporal Brandon Hallowich was able to find critical information that led to this arrest, and whereas without the extraordinary efforts of Corporal Brandon Hallowich, this case may have not been solved.
She was just 18 months old, and her tiny frame barely filled the hospital bed. Machines beeped softly in the background as doctors and nurses worked frantically, but the reality was clear. The odds were stacked against her. What no one knew in that moment was that her suffering hadn't started that day, and it should have been prevented long before she arrived at that emergency room. The explanation given was simple: a short fall, a minor accident. But when seasoned paramedics stepped into the quiet home hours earlier, something felt terribly wrong. The details didn't line up. There was no evidence of a fall severe enough to cause the injuries they were seeing. No panic. No urgency from the adults who should have been beside themselves. Just silence and excuses that didn't match the reality in front of them. Days later, the unthinkable happened, and as detectives peeled back the layers of this case, they would uncover a string of missed warnings, overlooked reports, and decisions that placed a vulnerable child directly in harm's way. How could this happen? How could a child who had already endured a life-threatening incident be sent right back into the same situation? Why did those in charge ignore the alarms ringing around them? The answers would devastate a family, outrage a community, and force an uncomfortable question. Was this tragedy truly unforeseeable, or was it the direct result of a system that failed to do its job? What you are about to hear is disturbing. But this is more than a story about one child. It's about a deeply broken system and the innocent lives it puts at risk. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. We cover real cases that matter and push for the change these children desperately needed. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and time, because this helps us to know when best to reach you with these videos. We read and respond to as many as we can. To our returning subscribers, thank you for your incredible support. Your likes, shares, and thoughtful comments are the reason we can keep shining a light on stories that must be told. Iris Rita Alfera was born on December 2nd, 2021 in Butler, Pennsylvania, a child who immediately became the center of her family's world. Her mother, Emily Alfera, was a young woman devoted to giving her daughter a safe and loving home. Emily's parents, Candace and Frank Alfera, shared that devotion, welcoming Iris into their house from the very beginning. Their home was warm, stable, and filled with the laughter of a child whose presence brought a new sense of purpose to the entire family. Iris was known for her bright eyes and constant curiosity. She was a quick learner who loved to explore the world around her. By her first birthday, she had already become fascinated by educational children's programs, especially the popular Miss Rachel videos. She would watch them closely, trying to mimic the songs and hand motions, a habit that brought constant smiles to her family. She was the kind of child who could light up a room simply by entering it.
Well, she has a mouthful.
Good job. Happy to mommy. Sing to mommy. Happy.
You're supposed to sing.
Sing to mommy.
Emily enjoyed dressing her daughter in matching outfits, often sharing pictures of the two of them on social media. Whether it was coordinating dresses in the summer or identical sweaters in the winter, these photos captured the close bond between mother and child.
I will be putting this baby in a pumpkin. I will be purchasing a large pumpkin, cutting a hole in the top, cutting 2 holes for legs, and I will be putting her in a pumpkin and taking 50 to 1,000 photos and putting those photos on Instagram. And if you have a baby and you're not putting that baby in a pumpkin, I am calling CPS.
Iris was also close to her grandparents, who were deeply involved in her daily care. Candace and Frank doted on her, filling their house with toys and activities that encouraged her natural curiosity. Though Emily and Iris's father, Bailey Jacoby, were no longer in a relationship, they worked out a visitation schedule that allowed Bailey to remain part of his daughter's life. He would see Iris regularly, taking her for visits on certain weekdays and weekends. To those who knew the family, it seemed like a cooperative arrangement designed to keep Iris connected to both sides of her family. The picture of Iris's young life was one of love and security. She was surrounded by people who adored her and wanted the best for her. To her family, she wasn't just a child, she was a source of joy, the promise of a future they looked forward to nurturing. None of them could have imagined how quickly that future would be taken away. In late February 2023, the first troubling signs began to surface. To fully understand what happened next, it's important to know who was closely involved in Iris's life at the time. Her father, Bailey Jacoby, was in a relationship with a young woman named Alicia Owens. Alicia, in her early 20s, lived with Bailey and was regularly around during Iris's visits. She was often part of the daily care the toddler received whenever she stayed at her father's home. With that context, the seriousness of what unfolded next becomes even clearer. During a routine diaper change after a weekend visit, Emily noticed something alarming in Iris's stool. Small, jelly-like beads that clearly didn't belong. Soon after, Iris began showing signs of discomfort, and Emily feared she might have swallowed other objects. She rushed her daughter to the hospital, desperate for answers. Doctors quickly discovered that Iris had ingested more than 20 water-absorbing beads, a small metal screw, and 3 button batteries. The situation was critical. Medical staff immediately understood the danger and began treatment without delay. Emily Alfera was shaken and confused. She told doctors and hospital staff that these items could not have come from her home. Emily had always been careful about her daughter's environment, and her parents, Candace and Frank, supported that statement. Their house was child-proofed, and Iris was closely supervised. Emily's insistence sparked questions that no one seemed able to answer. How could a toddler gain access to such items during a short visit elsewhere? Around this time, investigators would later uncover troubling evidence about Alicia Owens. On February 28th, Alicia used her phone to search for topics that raised immediate concerns. She wanted to know which household products could harm a baby. In the days that followed, she continued her searches, asking questions like whether sunscreen could harm a 1-year-old and what symptoms appeared if a child swallowed a battery. By early April, Alicia's internet history showed even more disturbing activity. She searched for water beads available near me, followed by questions about the effects of acetone and nail polish remover on children. These searches painted a deeply concerning picture. Yet at the time, no one was aware of this pattern. On April 5th, Emily, still alarmed after the February hospitalization, went to court. She filed an emergency request before Judge David Acri, asking for supervised visitation for Iris's father. Emily feared for her daughter's safety and pleaded with the court to intervene. Judge Acri denied the request. Instead, he ordered that the parents attend co-parenting classes, keeping the existing visitation schedule in place. Lawrence County Children and Youth Services was also involved. They conducted checks at both Emily's and Bailey's homes, but their reviews were cursory. Boxes were checked, forms were filled out, and the matter was closed. No one pressed further on how a toddler could have swallowed so many dangerous objects during a weekend visit. This was a missed opportunity. Had the warning signs been fully investigated and acted upon, Iris's fate might have been very different. Have you ever seen warning signs ignored? Let us know respectfully in the comments. Your voice helps others recognize the signs before it's too late. In the weeks that followed, subtle but significant warning signs began to appear again. By mid-June 2023, Alicia Owens' behavior, though hidden from public view, was becoming more concerning. On June 20th, digital evidence later revealed that she conducted yet another search on her phone, this time asking how a condition known as shaken baby syndrome occurs. This type of query, combined with her prior history of similar searches, painted a troubling picture about what was going on behind closed doors. Meanwhile, Emily Alfera's fears for her daughter's safety continued to grow. She confided in family members about her concerns, sharing how powerless she felt. Friends and relatives recalled Emily voicing her anxiety, but she had already been warned by officials that if she violated the existing custody order or refused to comply with visitations, she could risk losing custody altogether. That threat left her with few options. She was determined to protect Iris, yet constrained by the legal system that demanded she follow the schedule in place. At the same time, tensions within the dynamic between Alicia Owens and Emily Alfera were escalating. Those close to the family later said Alicia appeared jealous of the cooperative relationship Emily and Bailey maintained for the sake of their daughter. Emily and Bailey regularly communicated about Iris, sending updates and photos back and forth during visits. Investigators would later note how Alicia's resentment of that connection may have been growing. What no one realized was how dangerous that underlying tension could become. June 23rd and 24th were scheduled visitation days. Iris went to her father's home as planned, and to those who saw her, nothing seemed outwardly amiss. The toddler appeared to be her usual self, smiling and playing, showing no clear signs that anything was wrong. Family members could not have imagined that these were the final ordinary moments they would ever see. But beneath the surface, the situation was becoming increasingly volatile. Alicia Owens' actions, though largely invisible to outsiders, were setting the stage for tragedy. Emily's worries remained unanswered, the court order left unchanged, and the existing visitation arrangements continued as before. And then came Sunday, June 25th, the last day Iris would ever be seen alive outside of a hospital. Sunday, June 25th, 2023, began like any other scheduled visitation day. That morning, Bailey Jacoby left his Newcastle home to run errands, leaving his 18-month-old daughter Iris in the care of his girlfriend Alicia Owens. From the outside, it may have seemed like a routine arrangement, but what happened over the next few hours would end in unimaginable loss. Sometime that afternoon, Alicia would later claim Iris had fallen off a bed while she was in another room. According to her account, the toddler had been playing and had tumbled onto the floor. But when first responders arrived at the home, they quickly realized the situation didn't match the story they were given. Paramedics noted that Iris was unresponsive when they reached the residence. The environment struck them as oddly still. There was no visible panic from Alicia, no urgency as she explained what had supposedly happened. For seasoned responders, this lack of reaction raised immediate concerns. A minor fall from a low surface could not reasonably account for the child's condition. Iris was rushed to Jameson Hospital in Newcastle, where emergency staff worked to stabilize her. Doctors quickly recognized how grave her situation was. After several hours of fighting to maintain her vital signs, they made the decision to transfer her to UPMC Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, a specialized facility equipped to handle complex pediatric cases. At UPMC, a team of pediatric critical care specialists immediately took over. They worked on Iris around the clock, running multiple diagnostic tests to determine what had caused her rapid deterioration. Early findings suggested that her condition was not the result of a simple fall. Imaging studies showed signs consistent with violent shaking or forceful impact. Toxicology screens would later confirm the presence of acetone in her system, a chemical commonly found in household products. Doctors at UPMC Children's Hospital worked tirelessly for 4 days to try and save Iris. Despite their best efforts, her condition never stabilized. She had suffered severe internal complications that her small body could not overcome. Medical experts explained that her brain and other vital organs had sustained extensive damage, making recovery impossible. Toxicology tests also confirmed the presence of a dangerous chemical, acetone, in her system, further complicating her fragile state. This combination of factors left doctors with no viable options. By June 29th, it was clear that there was nothing more they could do. During those long, agonizing days, Iris's family remained at the hospital. Her mother, Emily Alfera, and grandparents, Candace and Frank, stayed by her bedside, clinging to hope. Nurses recalled how they whispered encouragement to the toddler, telling her how much she was loved. Family members took turns stepping out of the room to compose themselves, struggling to process how a seemingly ordinary weekend visit had led to this. On June 29th, after 4 days of intensive care, the doctors delivered the devastating news that Iris Rita Alfera had passed away. Despite every intervention available, Iris's condition had not improved. Emily collapsed into her parents' arms as the word sank in, while other relatives wept quietly nearby. One nurse later described the scene as one of profound heartbreak, the kind that stays with a hospital team long after the case ends. The loss shattered the family. They left UPMC that day with more questions than answers, devastated by a reality they had never imagined. What had really happened to Iris in the hours before she was found unresponsive? And why had earlier warning signs been ignored? If this story already feels important, please subscribe now, because what investigators discovered next wasn't just shocking, it could have been prevented. The investigation into what happened to Iris intensified as soon as it became clear her injuries were not consistent with the explanation given. Detectives from the Newcastle Police Department secured the home where she had been found and began piecing together the evidence. One of the first steps was obtaining a search warrant for Alicia Owen's phone, a device investigator believed could hold critical answers. When the data was analyzed, the results were startling. Alicia's internet history contained a series of troubling searches spanning from February through June 2023. She had looked up questions about how household products could harm a child, the effects of various chemicals, and what symptoms would appear if a young child swallowed certain items. Investigators also discovered deleted searches, including how to pass a lie detector test. These findings pointed to a deliberate pattern of behavior rather than a one-time accident. Meanwhile, forensic pathologists conducted a full examination to determine the exact cause of death. Their findings confirmed that acetone poisoning had caused multiple organ failure, which ultimately took Iris's life. Further examination of her injuries revealed trauma consistent with deliberate harm, not an accidental fall. These conclusions added weight to the growing body of evidence that suggested something far more sinister had happened in the Newcastle home. As the case unfolded, Pennsylvania Attorney General Michelle Henry and Newcastle Police Chief Robert Salem both spoke publicly about the gravity of the situation. They described the case as one of the most disturbing they had encountered in their careers. Their statements made clear that this was not only a criminal matter, but also a failure of the systems designed to protect vulnerable children. Lawrence County Children and Youth Services and the judicial process that had allowed unsupervised visits were placed under intense scrutiny. Questions were raised about why earlier warning signs had been overlooked and why the emergency request for supervised visitation had been denied. Public pressure began to mount, demanding answers from the agencies and officials who had made those decisions. This investigation was not just about holding one individual accountable. It was about examining the larger issues that had allowed a preventable tragedy to unfold. The evidence recovered from Alicia Owen's phone and the forensic findings from the autopsy would later become central to the case against her, forming a clear timeline of intent and action. Like and share this video if you believe these systemic failures must be addressed. The more we share, the more awareness we can raise for other children. By January 2024, after months of investigation, Alicia Owens was formally arrested. She was taken into custody at her Lawrence County residence and charged with multiple offenses, including criminal homicide, attempted homicide, aggravated assault, and child endangerment. The judge denied bail, citing the seriousness of the charges and the strength of the evidence gathered against her. Owens would remain behind bars as the legal process moved forward.
This is exclusive video of Alicia Owens after the Newcastle Police Department and State Attorney General's office arrested her this morning.
At a press briefing, prosecutors described the case as one of the most troubling they had ever handled. They also confirmed that the death penalty was under consideration, though they noted that the decision would be made carefully and with full review. This announcement only amplified the public's attention on the case. Court proceedings began to take shape, but delays soon followed. A judge allowed the defense to bring in an expert witness, and shortly after, Owens' legal counsel changed, pushing the scheduled trial date of January 6, 2025, into uncertainty. For Iris's family, the delays were deeply painful. Each postponement served as a reminder that justice had not yet been fully delivered. While the court system worked through its schedule, Emily Alfera and her parents, Candace and Frank, shifted their focus toward ensuring that Iris's memory would make a difference. They established Iris's Angels, a nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting children and advocating for reforms in child protection laws. The group quickly garnered community support and through local fundraisers and donations, raised over $17,000 within its first year. The funds were used for child safety initiatives and to provide necessities, such as school supplies and clothing, to children in need. Iris's Angels also worked to educate the public about the importance of acting on warning signs. Emily spoke openly about her experience, explaining how she had sought supervised visitation only to be denied. She stressed that no parent should be ignored when credible safety concerns are raised. The organization began holding workshops in schools and community centers, teaching families and educators how to recognize when a child might be at risk and how to report concerns effectively. Billboards appeared throughout Lawrence County bearing Iris's photo and the words "Justice for Iris," reminding the public of why the organization existed. Vigils were held in her honor, offering a space for the community to grieve and unite behind the call for systemic reform. Local legislators were approached with proposals aimed at ensuring that emergency custody requests would be taken more seriously, and that child protection agencies would be held accountable for thorough investigations. The Alfera family's advocacy resonated with many who had faced similar struggles. Their efforts transformed personal tragedy into a movement for change, giving Iris's story the power to protect other children. Volunteers and supporters joined their mission, helping to spread awareness and drive legislative discussions. This case became more than a criminal trial. It became a symbol of how systems can fail and how communities must respond. Emily and her parents knew that nothing could bring back their daughter, but they were determined to make sure her legacy would save lives. We cover these cases not just to tell a story, but to save lives. If you believe Iris Rita Alfera's story matters, please like and share this video if you can, because every time you engage, you help push for change by letting this case reach more people, which helps to drive awareness. Your voice could be the difference that prevents another tragedy. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.